Her hands trembled as she set down the coffee tray. The entire boardroom had gone silent. Every eye was on her, watching the humiliation unfold in real time. And standing there with that smug smile, the man who had abandoned her and their daughter 6 years ago had just made sure everyone knew exactly who she was. A waitress. A nobody. A mistake from his past he'd rather forget. But what happened next would wipe that smile off his face forever. By the way, as we step into the new year, I just want to wish you all nothing but good vibes, growth, and amazing moments ahead. Thanks for being here. Stay with me until the end because this story will restore your faith in justice. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. It's a humid Thursday morning in downtown Atlanta, June 2023. The Sterling Industries headquarters gleamed with the kind of polish that only money could buy. Marble floors reflected the Georgia sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. In conference room A on the 47th floor, 12 executives sat around a table, discussing a merger that would reshape the tech industry. This wasn't just any corporate meeting. This was Marcus Webb's coronation or promotion. At 31, he was about to be named the youngest VP of acquisitions in Sterling's 80-year history. His Harvard MBA hung on the wall of his corner office. His Tesla sat in the reserved parking spot downstairs. His engagement to Vanessa Ryan, daughter of Sterling's largest shareholder, had been announced in the business section of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution just last week. Marcus Webb had built an empire on the foundation of leaving his past behind. And he was very good at pretending that past had never existed. But the past has a way of walking through doors when you least expect it. The catering task is well ordered for this high-stakes meeting, the kind where every detail mattered. Premium coffee service, artisan pastries, sparkling water in crystal glasses. The kind of setup that required experienced staff who could be invisible while being impeccable. That's how Rachel Morrison ended up standing in conference room A, her hand steadying a silver tray, her heart hammering against her ribs as she realized who was sitting at the head of that table. Marcus. The same Marcus who had promised her forever when she was 22 and he was 25, both of them young and reckless and convinced love could conquer his family's disapproval. The same Marcus who had vanished the day she told him she was pregnant, leaving behind nothing but a note that said, "I'm not ready to throw my life away." The same Marcus who had never met his daughter. Who had never sent $1 of child support. Who had blocked her number and moved to a different city to make sure their worlds would never collide again. Except now they had. Rachel's dress was crisp and professional, the catering company's logo embroidered on the pocket. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. At 28, she still had the same warm brown eyes that had once looked at Marcus like he is the best thing that ever occurred to her. But now those eyes carried the weight of 6 years of double shifts, sleepless nights, and raising a daughter alone while finishing her business degree online. She had worked so hard to get here. Not to this catering job specifically, though she was grateful for the work. But to Atlanta. To this building. Because in 3 weeks, Rachel Morrison was supposed to start her new position as a junior analyst in Sterling Industries' finance department. She had beaten out 200 applicants for that job. She had aced every interview. She had finally finally clawed her way toward the kind of future she wanted to build for herself and her daughter. But Marcus didn't know any of that. All he saw when he glanced up from his presentation notes was the woman who represented everything he'd left behind. And the look that crossed his face made Rachel's blood run cold. Well, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent boardroom. Rachel Morrison. I have to say, I'm surprised to see you here. The other executives looked up, confused by the interruption. Marcus's fiancée, Vanessa, sat 2 seats away, her perfectly manicured eyebrows raising in curiosity. Rachel's professional training kicked in. Coffee, sir? She asked quietly, keeping her voice neutral, her expression blank. But Marcus wasn't interested in letting this moment pass quietly. Everyone, he announced, leaning back in his $3,000 leather chair with the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never facing consequences. I'd like to introduce you to an old friend. Rachel and I go way back. Tell them what you've been up to, Rachel. Still chasing those big dreams? The condescension dripped from every word. Rachel felt 12 pairs of eyes on her, saw the mixture of curiosity and second-hand embarrassment on their faces. She recognized several of them. Mr. Harrison, the CFO who would be her boss in 2 months. Ms. Lucas, the HR director who had personally called to offer her the analyst position. Her future was in this room. And Marcus was about to destroy it with the same carelessness he'd shown when he destroyed everything else. I'm working, Rachel said simply, trying to move past the moment, trying to preserve some dignity. Working, Marcus repeated, as if the word itself was amusing. Is that what we're calling it? Ladies and gentlemen, what you need to understand is that Rachel here has a very particular skill set. She's exceptional at making poor life choices and then expecting other people to clean up the mess. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Harrison frowned. But Marcus was on a roll, enjoying his audience, playing to the room like he always did. You see, we dated back in college. And Rachel had this wonderful plan where she thought getting pregnant would, shall we say, secure her future. Didn't quite work out the way you hoped, did it? The words hit Rachel like physical blows. She felt her face flush hot, then cold. Her hands gripped the coffee tray so hard her knuckles went white. But it was the lie that broke something inside her. The casual rewriting of history where he became the victim and she became the villain. The erasure of his promises, his love letters, his whispered plans for their future. The transformation of their daughter from a person into a poor life choice. That's not what happened, Rachel said quietly, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to control it. Oh? Marcus leaned forward, and there was something dangerous in his smile now. Something that suggested he was enjoying this far too much. Why don't you enlighten everyone then? Tell them about how you tried to trap me. How you thought a baby would force me to give up my career, my family, my future. Tell them how that worked out for you. The silence in the room was suffocating. Rachel could see the judgment forming on faces, the assumptions crystallizing. Gold digger. Manipulator. Desperate woman who tried to trick a successful man and failed. She opened her mouth to defend herself, to explain, to fight back against the narrative Marcus was spinning. But what could she say? That she had loved him? That he had loved her back, at least for a while? That their daughter, Emma, had his same gray eyes and his laugh, and sometimes Rachel had to leave the room when that laugh reminded her too much of everything she'd lost. None of that would matter to these people. None of that would change what they were already thinking. Before Rachel could find words, the conference room door opened. Everyone turned to look at the interruption. Corporate meetings at this level were sacred, undisturbed time. Whoever was walking through that door had better have a very good reason. The woman who entered was in her late 50s, elegant in a way that speaks of dominance. Silver-threaded hair pulled back in a chignon. A pearl gray suit that whispered designer without shouting it. But it was her presence that commanded attention. The kind of quiet authority that made powerful men sit up straighter without realizing they were doing it. Eleanor Sterling. Founder's granddaughter. Board member. The woman who still held 23% of company shares and had final say on all executive appointments. She was also, although very few people knew it, the person who checked internal performance and asked for the raw data or explanations for the reports that the junior analyst worked on. She was the one who had spent almost an hour on the phone with Rachel talking about market trends and financial forecasting. She had also noticed something in Rachel's application essay. Rachel wrote about being a single mother and working toward a better future. This reminded her of her own mother, who raised Eleanor alone after her father died. "I apologize for the interruption," Eleanor said, her voice crisp and professional. "But I was passing by and heard raised voices. I thought I should check if everything was all right." Her eyes swept the room, taking in the scene. Rachel frozen with the coffee tray. Marcus leaning back with residual smugness. The uncomfortable executives trying to look anywhere but at the obvious drama unfolding. "Everything's fine, Miss Sterling," Marcus said quickly, his tone shifting to the deferential respect he showed to people who could affect his career. "Just catching up with an old acquaintance. Nothing to concern yourself with." "I see," Eleanor said. But her gaze had landed on Rachel, and there was recognition there. "Ms. Morrison, isn't it?" Rachel nodded, not trusting her voice. "I thought so. Your face was familiar." Eleanor smiled, and there was something sharp beneath the pleasantness. "I've been looking forward to having you join our finance team. Your analysis of the Mercado merger was particularly insightful." The temperature in the room shifted instantly. Several executives sat up straighter. Mr. Harrison's expression changed from uncomfortable to suddenly interested. Even Vanessa looked at Rachel with new eyes. Marcus's face had gone very still. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Did you say joining our finance team?" "Yes," Eleanor replied, moving further into the room with the kind of unhurried grace that spoke of absolute confidence. "Ms. Morrison will be starting as a junior analyst in 2 weeks. Though given her performance during the internship and interview process, I suspect she won't stay junior for very long." She turned to Rachel with genuine warmth. "I hope this catering assignment hasn't been too tedious. I know you're probably eager to get started on real analytical work." Rachel felt like the floor had shifted under her feet. Eleanor Sterling knew about the catering task. She knew it was part of the company's rules, where only interns who were about to receive a position were allowed to handle food and set up for board meetings. The company never allowed outside catering because they did not want to risk any important information being shared with competitors. Eleanor knew all of this, and she still stood up for Rachel in front of the people who would become her colleagues or bosses. "It's honest work," Rachel managed. "I'm grateful for it." "Indeed," Eleanor agreed. Then she turned her attention to Marcus, and her expression cooled several degrees. "Mr. Webb, I believe you were saying something about Ms. Morrison's character when I entered. Would you care to repeat it?" The trap was so elegant that Rachel almost didn't see it happening. But Marcus, caught between his ego and his survival instinct, couldn't back down without looking weak in front of the same executives he'd been trying to impress. "I was simply providing context," he said carefully. "Rachel and I have history. I was concerned that her presence here might create complications." "History," Eleanor repeated thoughtfully. "What kind of history, specifically?" "We dated in college. It ended badly. She made certain accusations when I ended things that weren't true." "I never made any accusations," Rachel said, finding her voice at last. The words came out steady, backed by 6 years of survival, 3 years of proving to herself and her daughter that they didn't need him. "You left. I raised our daughter alone. Those are just facts." "Our daughter?" Vanessa spoke for the first time, her voice sharp with surprise. Marcus's jaw tightened. "A situation that was resolved years ago." "Resolved?" Rachel felt anger replacing humiliation, hot and righteous and long overdue. "You abandoned a pregnant woman and never looked back. You've never met Emma. Never sent child support. Never even asked if she was okay. The only thing you resolved was your conscience by pretending we never existed." "I wasn't ready to be a father," Marcus shot back, his composure cracking. "You knew what you were doing. You thought a baby would make me stay." "I thought a baby would make you grow up," Rachel corrected. "I was wrong." Eleanor had been watching this exchange with the intensity of a chess master observing a crucial game. Now she spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. "Mr. Webb, how much child support have you paid over the past 6 years?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. "And you've never met your daughter?" "That was a mutual decision," Marcus lied. "Rachel didn't want me involved." "That's not true," Rachel said firmly. "I sent you letters for the first 6 months. You returned them unopened. I tried to reach out through your family. They threatened legal action if I contacted them again. You made it very clear that you wanted nothing to do with us." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened her email. 3 years of documentation. Attempted contacts. Requests for support. Medical bills she'd paid alone. Birthday photos sent to an address that bounced them back. "I kept everything," she said, her voice stronger now. "Every attempt to reach you. Every bill I paid alone. Every milestone you missed. I kept it all because I knew someday Emma would ask why her father didn't want her. And I wanted to be able to prove to her that it wasn't her fault. That she was wanted. That I chose her even if you didn't." Eleanor took the phone, scrolling through the documentation with an expression that grew colder with each swipe. The room had gone absolutely silent. Even Marcus seemed to realize that the situation had shifted beyond his control. "Mr. Harrison," Eleanor said without looking up from the phone. What is Sterling Industries' stated policy on employees who fail to meet their child support obligations? The CFO cleared his throat uncomfortably. Company policy states that we cannot employ individuals who are actively evading court-ordered support payments. It's considered a character issue that reflects poorly on the organization. And if such payments were never court-ordered because the employee fled jurisdiction and blocked all contact? I would have to consult with legal, but I believe the spirit of the policy would still apply. Eleanor handed the phone back to Rachel, then turned to face Marcus directly. Mr. Webb, you have presented yourself to this company as a man of integrity. Your resume speaks of leadership, responsibility, innovation. Your promotion today was meant to be a recognition of your character as much as your competence. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. But character is not what we claim in boardrooms. It's what we do when we think no one is watching. It's how we treat people who have no power to help or hurt us. It's whether we stand by our responsibilities or run from them. Marcus had gone very pale. Ms. Sterling, I can explain. You already did, Eleanor interrupted. You explained quite thoroughly when you attempted to humiliate Ms. Morrison in front of her future colleagues. You explained when you lied about your past. You explained when you called your own child a poor life choice within these walls. She turned to address the entire room. Sterling Industries was built by my grandfather on a principle he never wavered from, that a company is only as good as the character of the people who run it. We can teach someone skills. We can provide training and mentorship and opportunity. But we cannot teach someone to be decent. Either you are or you aren't. Back to Marcus. You aren't. You can't do this, Marcus said, panic creeping into his voice for the first time. I have a contract. I was promised this promotion. The engagement announcement has already gone out. The promotion required board approval, Eleanor said calmly. Which was scheduled for this afternoon. I think it's safe to say that approval will not be forthcoming. As for your contract, I believe HR will find several morality clauses that apply to your situation. Ms. Chen? The HR director nodded, already taking notes. Vanessa had been sitting frozen throughout this entire exchange. Now she stood up, her chair scraping against the floor with sharp finality. You didn't tell me you had a child. We're done, she said to Marcus, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. The engagement is off. Don't bother calling. She walked out without another word, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. Marcus looked around the room desperately, searching for allies, for sympathy, for some way to salvage the situation. But the executives who had been hanging on his every word 30 minutes ago now avoided his gaze. Success had 1,000 friends. Failure, it seemed, had none. Clear out your office by the end of the day, Eleanor said. Security will escort you. As if summoned, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Marcus stood slowly, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume he'd been caught wearing. The golden boy routine, the casual cruelty, the untouchable confidence, all of it had evaporated, leaving behind a man who had built his entire life on running from consequences. And the consequences had finally caught up. He walked toward the door, then paused next to Rachel. For a moment, she thought he might apologize. might acknowledge, even now, what he'd done. Instead, he said quietly, "You planned this. You must be so proud." Rachel looked at him. Really looked at him. And realized that she felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just a kind of distant relief that Emma would never know this man. That she would never have to watch her daughter's face fall when her father chose his image over her existence. "I didn't plan anything," Rachel said. "I just stopped letting you write my story." Marcus left. The security guards followed. The conference room door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like the end of a chapter. Eleanor turned to the remaining executives. "I apologize for the disruption. Ms. Morrison, would you mind stepping into my office? I think we need to have a conversation about your start date." Rachel followed Eleanor down the hallway, her mind still reeling from adrenaline released. They passed Marcus's corner office where he was already throwing things into a box, his face a mask of barely contained rage. In Eleanor's office, the older woman poured 2 glasses of water and gestured for Rachel to sit. "I'm sorry you had to endure that," Eleanor said. "Though I confess I'm not sorry about how it ended." "How did you know?" Rachel asked. "About the catering task, about Marcus, about any of it?" Eleanor smiled. "I didn't know about Marcus specifically. But I make it my business to know about the people we hire. When I saw your application 3 months ago, I was impressed by your credentials. But what struck me was your personal essay. You wrote about being a single mother and what that taught you about resource management, about prioritizing, about doing more with less." She took a sip of water. "My mother raised me alone after my father died. She worked 3 jobs to put me through school. She taught me that desperation creates innovation and that people who've had to fight for everything often fight harder for what's right. So I called your references. I spoke to your professors. I learned about the double shifts and the night classes and the daughter you're raising alone." "And you hired me anyway?" Rachel's voice cracked. "I hired you because of it," Eleanor corrected. "Because I've seen enough resume-perfect candidates who crumble the moment things get difficult. I wanted someone who already knew how to survive difficulty and come out stronger." She set down her glass. "But I also hired you because when I asked your economics professor about you, he told me that you once stood up in class and corrected him on a calculation error that would have thrown off the entire semester's grading curve. He said most students would have kept quiet and taken the easy A. You couldn't let it stand, even though it cost you." Eleanor met Rachel's eyes. "That's integrity. Real integrity, not the performed kind that disappears when it becomes inconvenient." Rachel felt tears threatening and blinked them back hard. "Thank you. For everything you did in there." "I didn't do anything I wouldn't do for any employee facing harassment," Eleanor said. "Though I'll admit I took particular satisfaction in it. Men like Marcus Webb make it harder for the rest of us to build companies based on merit instead of connections." She stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. "Your start date is in 3 weeks. But if you'd like to come in earlier, shadow the team, get a feel for the work before you officially begin, you're welcome to. I think you'll find your colleagues and bosses are eager to work with you. Especially after today." "After today?" Rachel asked, confused. Eleanor's smile was sharp. After today, you're the woman who stood up to the golden boy and didn't flinch. After today, you're the single mother who documented everything and kept her dignity while he lost his. After today, you're not just another junior analyst. You're the person who reminded everyone in that room that character matters. 6 months later, Rachel Morrison sat in her new office on the 42nd floor, reviewing the quarterly reports that would form the basis of her presentation to the board. Through her window, she could see the Atlanta skyline stretching toward a cloudless April sky. On her desk sat 2 framed photos. One showed Emma, now 7 years old, grinning gap-toothed at the camera in her preschool graduation gown. The other showed Rachel herself on her first day at Sterling Industries, shaking hands with Eleanor Sterling while Mr. Harrison looked on approvingly. She had been promoted twice in 18 months. The junior analyst position had lasted exactly 8 weeks before Eleanor moved her into a senior analyst role. 3 months after that, she'd been named team lead for strategic acquisitions. The work was challenging, demanding, sometimes overwhelming. But Rachel had spent 6 years doing the impossible. Compared to raising a child alone while finishing her degree and working double shifts, corporate finance was almost easy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. They were learning about families in class, and Emma had drawn a picture of Mommy and Ellie. Rachel smiled. Eleanor had become an unexpected presence in their lives, occasionally joining them for weekend brunches, sending birthday presents, offering the kind of mentorship that went beyond business advice. There was a knock on her door. Mr. Harrison poked his head in. "Ready for the board presentation?" Rachel gathered her files. "Ready." As she walked toward the conference room, she passed the corner office that had once been Marcus's. It belonged to someone else now, someone who'd earned it through actual merit instead of connections and charm. She had heard through the office gossip network that Marcus had struggled to find work after Sterling. That Vanessa had made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why the engagement ended. That he'd eventually taken a position in a smaller firm in a different city, his trajectory permanently altered by one moment of cruelty. Rachel didn't take pleasure in his downfall. But she didn't mourn it either. Because the truth was, Marcus had done her a favor that day in the conference room. His cruelty had stripped away the last remnants of doubt she'd carried. The voice that whispered she wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to be here. He had tried to humiliate her back into invisibility, and instead, he'd forced her to become visible in a way she couldn't take back. In the boardroom, Eleanor Sterling caught her eye and smiled. Rachel smiled back, then opened her laptop and began the presentation that would recommend Sterling Industries acquire a small tech startup for $43 million. The same executives who had watched her hold a coffee tray 18 months ago now took notes as she spoke. They asked questions. They challenged her assumptions. They treated her like exactly what she was, a colleague whose expertise they respected. And when the presentation ended and the board voted unanimously to approve her recommendation, Rachel felt something settle into place. Not triumph exactly. Not revenge. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had rebuilt her life on her own terms. That Emma would grow up watching her mother stand tall instead of small. That the story Marcus had tried to write about her, the story of failure and poor choices and desperation, had been overwritten by a better truth. Sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty reveal the biggest truths about who people really are. And sometimes the people others try to humiliate end up being the ones who redefine what success looks like. Rachel Morrison had gone from invisible to unforgettable. Not because someone powerful had rescued her, but because she had refused to let someone cruel define her. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more incredible stories that prove dignity and hard work matter more than connections and cruelty. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Rachel's situation?